Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the channel. It is Clutch Chess Day 1. It's a 3-day tournament where they're playing a lot of double rounds. It is 4 players and arguably maybe the 4 best players in the world at the moment. Magnus Carlsen, Hikaru Nakamura, Fabiano Caruana, and of course the world champion Gukesh Dommaraju. I have one game to show you, and that's because they played a lot of games. I think there were about 7 rounds that were played yesterday, and of course there's 2 games per round, so 14 games. Can't show you all 14, but I have to show you this game. And then we will talk about the overall standings. So they were paid off in many matches, right? And this was in round 2, Magnus Carlsen versus Gukesh, double round robin. Magnus played d4, we had knight to f6, c4, e6, knight to f3. d5, g3, bishop to b4 check, knight b d2, a5, bishop to g2, a4, and now a3. So this is a pretty standard Catalan kind of setup, kind of system. Bishop to e7, short castles. This has been seen before. Knight to c6, queen c2, short castles. So far, the players haven't done anything extraordinary. It's a rapid game, so nothing too chaotic. And actually, I just realized I've clicked the wrong game. Rook d1, bishop to d7, and now e4. D takes e4, and what we get is a big simplification. The knight jumps out to the side, queen e2, bishop to c6, and this is very common strategy, just by the way, for the bishop to reroute so that you can trade off this very powerful Catalan bishop. And you would argue that Gukesh did an amazing job in this game. We had the knight jumping in, we had c6, there was this trade, Magnus found the right moves, but it was drawish as they traded queens, and unfortunately, we got to this endgame, where Gukesh is down the exchange, but he has a couple... No, he's not down the exchange, sorry. Don't know what I saw there. He's not down the exchange. He's got a misplaced knight. Magnus has maybe got a bit of a misplaced knight. But it's really going to be hard to win this game as the pieces get, fought over. And we see some checks. We trade off a bunch of pieces to get to this rook endgame. And this rook endgame was never going to be anything other than a draw. As the two players, they played well and it took time. And, Magnus will try and extract water from stone, but even he can't win this one as they played. And eventually they did make a draw. But oh boy, their second game in this match was absolutely insane. Absolutely insane. Let me just find it quickly. I don't know why it's disappeared. Yes, here it is. Sorry. And this was obviously the first game of their match. I don't know why it disappeared. Just look, I'm doing some weird things. Or maybe I just clicked on the wrong game. This was Gukesh with the white pieces. He played e4 and Magnus Carlsen played d6, the Peert's defense. We had d4, knight to f6, knight to c3, e5. So almost a bit of a... If Gukesh here played knight to f3, this would have probably been similar to a Philidor defense, which you can get. So knight to f3, and now we're in the Philidor. Knight bd7, which I believe is like the black lion or the lion variation when you've got the knight here and you're in the Philidor. One coach used to play this. Bishop to c4, bishop to e7, short castles, and now a4. Just taking space on the queen side, you don't want Magnus to expand. c6 seems logical. Rook to e1, and now h6. The Philidor defense and this kind of structure, I find it really fascinating because white really struggles to get active play. Like, white's always going to be slightly better, right? White's always going to be slightly better. But how do you create play? Because, this structure is fairly locked, right? Even if you trade once, it locks up. And black can get, g4. And white kind of struggles. And, black's pieces actually activate quite nicely. So it's really interesting to play this, and it's not a bad weapon if you're playing with the black pieces. So we get h3, rook e8, bishop to e3, e takes d4, bishop takes d4, and now bishop to e7, bishop to f8, sorry, bishop e7 to f8. Just opening up the rook on this file, creating a bit of pressure. Knight drops back to d2, but now knight to e5. Beautiful move, inviting a trade, which would leave Magnus with 2 bishops. Instead, Gukesh retreats his bishop to f1. I mean, the symmetry is kind of fascinating. But obviously, sorry, my dog just entered the room. Hey, Monty, have I actually shown you on camera before? Cute and fluffy. This knight is really well positioned, but you don't want to trade and give Magnus 2 bishops without any compensation. So knight to g6, and now Magnus might be looking to infiltrate and get some key squares. a5, good move, taking space. Bishop to e6, developing a piece. And now g3. You want to get this bishop back in the game, so the easiest way to do that is to fianchetto it. But d5. And d5 comes with lots of complications, because do you take? Here's the question. Do you take? Do you push? Do you do nothing and play something like a6, disrupting the structure? Now you can see him. Yes, you can. Hello, Marty. Cute and fluffy dog. d5. So Gukesh has got some decisions to make. He plays bishop to g2, just developing now the pawn's not hanging. And here Magnus makes a mistake. It's a rapid game, so mistakes are likely to happen. He plays bishop to b4. And Gukesh is better if and only if, I say better, I mean 0.6, right? If and only if he takes the knight. It's a really fascinating idea, because queen takes f6, and now you take on d5. Now you play e takes d5. And even if the bishop takes, for example, you can play now knight e4, where you hit the queen and you hit the bishop. And ultimately, when you take the bishop, just by the way, you're going to protect that pawn as well. So it's a really beautiful idea, bishop to b4. Not bishop to b4, bishop takes f6. Unfortunately, we just get a6 from Gukesh, so he misses half a chance. B takes a6, and now we take in the center. We grab, and we grab, and then we grab everything, and we get here. And we get to this position, right, after all the exchanges. I don't know who you could argue is better here, because that is a huge liability for Magnus Carlsen, and then he's going to have to just deal with a clean pass pawn. However, this structure without a light squared bishop is not great. And there are some serious attacking chances for Magnus Carlsen. So Gukesh might win if the game goes another 60-70 moves. If this game goes 60-70 more moves, Gukesh probably wins. If this game goes another 30 moves, or less, maybe even 20 moves, game's over. Magnus Carlsen will win. So let's see. Magnus has to attack now, because long term, I think Gukesh, and most people would probably agree, Gukesh is better and he plays for a win. Queen b5, targets the rook. Rook to a2, makes sense, you're defending your weakness. a5, gotta push it, otherwise it's a liability. Queen to a4, looking for a queen trade. No queen trade, I'm infiltrating, I'm targeting the knight. Knight drops back to f1. But now I can play rook a6. And it is becoming quite apparent, quite quickly, that Gukesh's king is not safe. He plays b4, beautiful move. You obviously cannot take, else you lose your queen. But we get rook to e6. Giving up fully this pawn. You can't really take it. You take it, it's mate 9. Because rook e1. Uh-oh. And that is a problem. So you have to deal with that. So Gukesh plays rook to d2. We get queen to f5. And now we take. But rook e1 still comes. Oh, sorry. The best move here is rook e1. Again. That knight can't move. Now it's not defending this. And now this knight can gallop into the position. And this bishop, just by the way, can come alive. Instead, Magnus plays queen takes h3. Still the idea to play rook to e1. But now queen, as you can see on screen, queen d1 is possible, preventing rook e1. Fortunately, Gukesh does what a lot of people would have done. He plays a6. Doesn't sense the danger. And now rook e1 comes. And rook e1 only works because you might still have queen to b5. Rook e1 only works because of the absolutely insane bishop to c5. Now, obviously, the queen cannot take the bishop. Just to be clear, queen cannot take the bishop, you get mated in 1. But you might be thinking, what if bishop takes bishop? Now you lose to knight e5 and knight f3. And the thing is, your queen cannot get back to any of the squares it needs to protect f3. And the bishop is now moved off the defense. So bishop to c5, one of the most savage bishop sacrifices you have ever seen in your life. Because the only 2 pieces that can stop you getting mated have to move. Now there is only 1 move on screen, as you can see. For Gukesh, he does find it. Queen to d3. He survives a little bit longer. We get bishop takes d4, c takes d4. And now, rook a1. There are a few moves here that are holding for Gukesh. A few moves that are holding. He can play queen e2, which is a nice move. The knight will still come, but you'll deal with that. Steady plays rook d1, which loses. You can see on screen. It loses to knight to h4. Reason being, I am threatening mate. If you obviously take my knight, obviously the queen is not hanging, just to be clear, because the rook would take. But I have check, and I would pick up the rook and threaten various mates. Knight to h4. And if you don't take, you have to try and defend mate. So you probably have to play something like knight to e3. But now I play knight f3 check. And if you try to defend, go to like here, to defend there, I just take. And here loses as well. Because you don't end up defending g2. But Magnus Carlsen went the wrong way. Magnus Carlsen went to knight f4. And Gukesh resigned. You can see it on the side here. Magnus Carlsen won. But now knight e3 does work. Because you don't have knight to f3. So now it defends. And you're still fine. It's a draw. Because this pawn is so strong. Crazy. Absolutely crazy. Gukesh resigns in a drawn position. Which is just mental. Look, it was just day 1, but they did get through about 7 or 8 rounds, I think, or 6 rounds. How many rounds did they get through? They got through 6 rounds, yes. So they played each other twice. And after day 1, overall, Gukesh leads. Despite losing to Magnus Carlsen in their mini-match, he does lead. He's on 4 points out of the 6 that he's got. Then there's Magnus Carlsen, who's 3.5. He did suffer a defeat to Hikaru Nakamura, but he ended up defeating Gukesh in their one-on-one match and Fabiano Caruana in their one-on-one match. Fabiano Caruana sits in 4th place with 1.5 points, unfortunately losing 2-0 to Gukesh in a dominant performance from the world champion, getting half a point against Magnus Carlsen, and then 1 point against Hikaru Nakamura, as I think they drew their match. So an impressive day 1, but tomorrow day 2 is just as important because the points count more as the time control gets, I think, slower. I'm not sure. I'll show the exact format, don't shoot me. But the points are worth more tomorrow on day 2.